Matt Vaughan has been part of the Seattle music business since he was a teenager. First as part of his mother Diana's work with Queensryche, then later as the owner of Easy Street Records. As he evolved the business by adding a cafe and adapting to changing music formats, he had experiences that are unique and unforgettable. He shared just a few of them from his 35-year storied career.
How did you come to build a cafe? Why did you build a cafe in here in the first place?
Well, I did it for selfish reasons. I told you. It's there wasn't a lot of places that you could go to in the mid to late 90s. Charleston was great, but they were a little too far away from this junction. And I was fortunate in that my roommate, Pat Tunison, was a great friend of mine, but also a great chef. And he's the one that instilled the confidence in me to try and do a cafe.
But Easy Street was not in this full space at that time.
No.
Over here, right?
Do you remember Joe's Grill?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Joe's Grill, they served up probably 50 pots of coffee every day and maybe sold 2 hamburgers. It was a blue-haired, people would have their bridge meetings there. That was the kind of place. It was a great family, good people, but eventually they went out of business, and I had become good friends with them, and they offered to sell, I think it was just the chairs and the tables and chairs. It was like
what year was
$500, $1,000 total. Like, whoever wants the tables and chairs, is going to get the.
What year was that?
That would have been 96, 97. And then I had it for about 2 years, not knowing what I was going to do with it.
You were paying the lease?
Now it wasn't as bad as what we're doing with up the street there with the hydrant, whatever they're calling it.
Oh, yeah.
It's been sitting there for almost 10 years, it seems like. I was using it as storage. I was considering maybe expanding the record shop, but there was a full kitchen in there with. It needed a lot of updating, but the big thing is that there was a hood that went through the building to the roof. Those are hard to come by. They're very expensive.
Very expensive, yes.
So I never tore that out, but big high ceilings, and I started doing in-stores there. The first real in-stores that Easy Street ever did, and really the kind of the first ones that you saw in Seattle with like great sound, decent lighting, where it felt more like a venue.
Who was the first one?
First one, I believe, was a group called Luna. They were on Elektra Records. Then we also had Rocket from the Crypt, and then we had Mudhoney, of course.
Oh, wow.
Mudhoney was, spilling out into the street. That would have been 97, 98. They had a record out called Tomorrow Hit Today, and it was a street date in-store. But I was just throwing beers out. It was more like a party. But when we weren't doing in-stores in there, we were, it was just like a social club for me and my friends, and a few customers here and there. We had a basketball hoop, we had a turntable and boxing bags.
So this is
all we were missing was a pool table, but that was downstairs.
Was the hoop indoors?
Yeah. Yeah, that's how high the ceilings are here.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's funny. So you started, and you didn't take it seriously as a cafe until...
Every day I'm, trying to find a good cup of coffee. I'm trying to find, good breakfast, So I wasn't... I really just did it again for selfish reasons. Eventually I just kind of got pushed into it. I had no choice. I had to do it.
So what year was it officially opened as a cafe?
1998.
1998.
Yeah. So this will be its 25th anniversary.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Do you have some special event planned for that to honor that?
This is it. Thanks for reminding us. It's
There'll be
25th
there'll be no
anniversary.
there'll be no party.
I'm just putting it together right now. 25th
There's gonna be
anniversary.
well, be an anniversary cake. You're gonna
Well, now that we can get people together again, sure, let's try to do something.
just thought I'd give you the idea.
Yeah, thanks, Patrick.
The point is, 25 years, and it didn't start out well. I understand. It
No.
started out slow.
We were losing our ass. If it would have just started out as just a cafe,
Yeah.
there was no record store attached to it, we would have been out of business. Yeah.
So at
Yeah.
first, the record store subsidized the cafe,
Right. Yeah, we were losing $4 to $5 grand a month.
but you
For
weren't
3
serving,
years.
weren't serving beer, or were you?
Soon enough, we were. Yeah, and we were doing pretty well with coffee. We had a good coffee bar down here, and that was the majority of the business. It wasn't the food. So there I got Pat Tunison, who's a master chef, just sitting there. He's going up and down the street trying to drum up business. I was too. It was just too weird, too eccentric for most people. And then it clicked.
Did you start out with all of the clever names for the dishes? Was it all done with that design in mind right away?
Yeah, it was the Johnny Cash Special, the Dolly Parton Stack, the Easy Rider, the Woody Guthrie Farmer's Omelet, the Hank Williams Western Omelet,
So right from the
the
start,
James Brown's,
it was
the
designed
Francis
as
Farmer French Toast,
it was a
the
musical
Little
themed,
Richard, the Suzy Q. Yeah.
musical themed cafe.
Yes, and some saw that as kind of corny or, funny. The food was great though. Charleston was still open. I think Webster's down the street had closed or morphed into something else. There really wasn't a standalone diner in the Junction here that I recall. I don't think there
There
was.
was Bees Cafe. There was,
Bees. Okay. Yeah.
they were around
Okay.
even then. And now it's changed.
Yeah.
But from that early beginning, it clicked in the early 2000s, 4 or 5
Yeah.
years out.
Eventually, you start getting the arty types and the students, and almost kind of a beatnik kind of crowd, musician crowd. So that's what I was dealing with.
Well, you mentioned to me that while it was under construction, Chris Cornell came up and spied what was going on and came in and had a beer.
Yeah,
Tell me about that.
he was the first person to sit at the coffee counter there. We had just finished it, my friend Jeff and I, the Horseshoe bar down there. And he was walking his daughter Lily up the street, and the garage door was halfway open because we were trying to get the dust out. And he peeks his head in, and he'd become a great friend of the shop, and he shopped here all the time. At that point, though, we were having to close the shop down for him. We had just gotten so famous. Things had really changed for it with the scene and for Soundgarden, for Chris himself.
He was already well known at that time.
Oh yeah. And that would have been after Super Unknown. Yeah, and so he walks in with Lily in the stroller, and he sits down and he says, "You got beers here?" He's like, "Got Rainier or Olympia." And we hand him an Olympia. He downs it, and he's just asking questions about the 45s that are in there.
Oh, yeah.
And thought that was a cool concept. And I told him, hey, I was telling him my friend John over at Cyclops is the one that kind of helped me come up with this. He kind of gave me the tricks on how to do it right. And then we talked about Cyclops and the Belltown scene, which is obviously part of it. So, he was a great friend of the store, and I'm honored to have had him in here.
When
so
did
many
you
times.
first meet him?
Oh gosh, that goes back to when maybe I was up the street, 87, 88. I mean, I knew him from the Penny Lane days.
Did you really?
Yeah.
He would come in to buy records?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Wow. What kind of met you?
His best friend Eric Garcia, West Seattle guy, and him would with, they were in quite often, and Scott McCullum, who would later be in Skinyard and Grunt Truck. So there was, I mean, West Seattle was as grungy as it gets. It really was. You know.
Do you remember what kind of music he liked even then?
Well, he supported most Northwest artists,
wow.
and most Northwest
Even
bands.
then?
Oh, everyone, we all piled on his back. He's the guy that carried the whole scene, to be honest. And, you get me talking too much more, I'll start crying. He's the guy. He's the guy. But what I do recall, and whenever Jeff Buckley Grace came out, I'm thinking 93, 94, early 90s, Jeff Buckley Grace comes out, and I recall Chris waxing poetic to myself and the entire staff for it seemed like 15 minutes about this might be one of the greatest records of all time. This is, he thought Jeff Buckley's lyrics, vocals, was something that really spoke to him. I think what he was saying is someone that was on equal par with him is what he was saying without saying it. Yeah, but I never sensed any kind of competition with any artist with him. And when you're that confident or you're that good, here we got the Ramones playing right now, and you go to New York, the Ramones and television and the Heartbreakers and Blondie and Talking Heads and New York Dolls, Dictators. I mean, they were competitive. Those bands were competitive. It was like gang warfare for a lot of them.
Scene, yeah.
Yeah. Seattle, not so much at all. And a lot of that starts with Chris Cornell being the leader and not that way.
Do you think West Seattle as a place has an influence over that attitude? West Seattle doesn't seem like a place where people compete with each other necessarily. We're all sort of...
It's a collective out here. A lot of that, I think, comes from, you have a lot of unions out here. And at the time, shipyard workers and stevedores and maritime industry, fishing industry, Boeing engineers. I mean, all these homes are, post-war, built for Boeing engineers close to the airport.
Isn't it also the geographic isolation? Because people don't come here necessarily. It's not a destination per se as West Seattle. It's a closed community because of our inability to get out. So the peninsula tends to keep people trapped, and we kind of go, well, I better look out for my neighbor, so they'll look out for me. Right? It's that little
the accidental
fish in a barrel. The whole idea. So, I think it has something to do with it. In any case, you've had lots of in-stores. Do you know how many you've had?
I would say close to 2,000.
Wow. 2,000 shows in 35 years.
That's a lot for a record store to say. It's not so much for the Crocodile or so many of our great venues around town, but for a record shop, that's pretty high.
I'd say there are two still standing, well-known nationally venues here outside of the Paramount, for example. It's this place and the Crocodile.
Showbox. I mean, it's morphed many times, but we'll see if that sticks around.
2,000 shows, 35 years.
Yeah, thank you.
And you lasted longer than the Key Arena.
Yeah.
Think about it. It's true. In any case, let's go through some famous names that have been through here and give me your impressions about them and your sense of what kind of people they were and your experience with them.
Okay.
Let's go with Elvis Costello.
Elvis Costello. We had an in-store with him he helped open my Queen Anne store. Grand opening.
Oh, wow.
That was the first year that we were open. The record When I Was Cruel had come out, which I had gotten in advance of, and I loved that record. And I just happened, and I was reading a New York Times article about how he had done a in-store somewhere. It might have been in London or whatever, but just the fact that he had done one, I thought, oh my God, for a legendary artist like that to even consider it, regardless if it's his hometown that he's at or wherever, that's great. But yeah, I loved that record. I felt that Seattle had always been a strong market for him from the very beginning. I sensed that he really loved Seattle. Seattle was always on his tour stops. And he was starting the tour here and was rehearsing here. So he had a studio for a few days prior, and so the tour started in Seattle. Which I thought, okay, well, he's got some time. But here in Seattle,
So this was all your idea?
yeah,
They didn't reach out to you, you reached out to them.
right. And so I reach out to my label rep. Label rep puts me in touch with the manager. As you know, it was a far cry, but hey, you're having the conversation, and his security team happened to be in town, and they were, and the head of security, his name was Patty. He comes in with two other blokes. They're all Irish, so this was like Miller's Crossing walking into the shop. Older guys with the paperboy caps, big guys, hooligans, really, older hooligans from the 60s, 70s it looked like. And Costello, I believe, is Irish, or was born in Ireland. It has something to do with Ireland, so there's a connection there with Ireland. And I'm Irish American, and we had a little bit of a rapport from the get-go. Let's put it that way. And they walk around. They walk through every square inch of the shop. They're like, "Where's the green room going to be?" I'm like, "Well, it's the back room here, or the break room for my staff, but it'll be yours." And they're kind of laughing. Okay. So you're going to put Elvis Costello in the employee break room. I'm like, "Well, I'll fix it up. Don't worry." Okay. And so they're laughing through all of this. And then I had these murals outside, and I said, I'll throw in a When I Was Cruel mural. I went on about Elvis Costello, talking about all of his records. Clearly, they knew I was a fan. They knew that Seattle was the marketplace. The show was already sold out, so I didn't have anything to compete with the promoter of the show at the Paramount. And Patty says, we're going to need a barrier. And my contractor was on standby right there. He came down. We'll have a fence built tomorrow. Okay. He says, well, guys, I think this is going to happen. And Elvis shows up a couple days later. It was a line around the block, all the way, I remember, to Cafe Ladro, around First and Roy, First and Mercer.
Oh, boy.
We had the store closed down, and then one by one we let everybody in. He stuck around for 4 hours, signed every autograph.
Did he really?
Yeah.
So did you have a conversation with him and talk to him?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Quite a few.
What was your impression of him?
He's still got that snotty kind of punk rock attitude, but he was all in. This guy is a guy that has never stopped, so he doesn't look back on the past all that much. Although that particular record, he dosed himself in it a little bit. And I just recall him just being extremely kind to everybody, and gave everyone as much time as they needed with him. And, yeah.
How was the show?
Oh, great! He did it as a one-man show. So he was playing all the pedals.
Really?
He
didn't have his band with it?
No, he was doing all the percussion. I think he had a keyboard.
Well, that's what he did in Skiffle, and when he started out, he was busking on the street.
Yeah.
So he was used to that.
Yeah.
Very familiar with that style of music. He didn't have a band with him at all.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Now let's move on to Lana Del Rey.
Lana Del Rey. She had a record out called Born to Die. It had just come out. It was doing well. People were wondering who she was. And before you knew it, she was on Saturday Night Live essentially as a nobody. And she does Saturday Night Live, I think, maybe just a week or two after the record dropped. And she's just, if you remember, she's just standing there. And I recall watching it. I never thought anything other than she's beautiful and she's a diva or chanteuse, really. And I think video games or played a couple songs, great. But she got panned the next day. One of the worst performances on Saturday Night Live. Broke her heart. The record label, her management, everybody was in panic mode over it. And the following day after Saturday Night Live, a day or two after, I get a call from Universal Music. Would you be willing to have Lana Del Rey?
They reached out to you.
I'm like, well, yeah, I love the record. I just saw her on Saturday Night Live. Yeah, well, it didn't go over too well. I thought she was great. Like, well, I said, I also just had Mike McCready asking about her. He loves her, Mike McCready. I said, no, people love her up here. He says, okay, well, we need to get her back on the street level. And we need a retail venue that can host her properly and give her her due that we think she deserves. Somewhere where she can feel natural. She was maybe under a little bit too much pressure on Saturday Night Live, being on network TV. I said, well, absolutely, I bring her. And so she comes to Seattle. It was sold out. I think we had to buy the record in advance, and 800 people there. Couldn't get any more in. She comes on stage, and before she even says a word, she's of course standing room only, and everyone's just applauding her because she needed it. This was a young girl that just got panned nationally for performing her two songs, and that was her style. She was like a Julie London type, She was like a Dusty Springfield. She wasn't there to put on a big show on Saturday Night Live. She was just there to do her songs, and she almost dropped to her knees and was in tears over the applause that she was getting. I recall her lip was quivering and she couldn't even say anything on the mic. She was really nervous, and she just was being overflooded with all this gratitude and all this love from Seattle. She goes on to do her set there in the shop. She probably played for 40 minutes or so, and she's getting an encore, which rarely happens at an in-store. In-stores, they're playing their songs, they're selling their record. It's like it's an animated book reading, and she goes into the back room, and I go back there with her. It's just her and I. She's sitting on the backstage area behind the curtain, and I open the curtain for just a little bit. I'm like, man, look there. She peeks out, and I said, they want another song. She stands up, and all she says was, I knew this was the right decision, coming to Seattle and playing here. And she's like, and I'm hugging her, and again, her lips quivering, and I'm like, Lana, do you want to do another song? She goes, I do. She says, I want to do Heart Shaped Box by Nirvana. I was like, whoa, wow. She goes, it's my favorite song, and I'm in Seattle. And she's like prepping herself, and then she sits back down. She goes, I don't know if I can do that here in this store, in this city. How about, can you just play it really, really loud, and then I'll come out and I'll sign autographs. I'm like, all right. Let me go to the front. I'll crank it. Your people bring you up. Great. That's what we did. We just cranked heart-shaped box. And she walked past me and winked and said, "Thank you so much."
Well, that's sweet.
She stayed
Nice story.
to sign autographs for everybody. One reason I think that to this day, Seattle is one of the strong markets was for what she did that particular day, 2008 or so.
How about Dirks Bentley?
Dirks Bentley played on Record Store Day at the Queen Anne shop. At the time, he and still is one of the young guns of country music from Arizona. And Kevin Larson, who works for me but was working for EMI Music at the time, he was always telling us about how great Dirks is. We were playing his records in the shop. Dirks was doing well for Easy Street, and for a store like Easy Street or any Northwest store, country isn't necessarily one of your bigger genres. But for us, Dirks sold very well.
He's a bit of a crossover.
Yeah. And from what we could tell, his backstory, he was into Rolling Stones and Graham Parsons, and he had a little bit more muscle to just your typical country kid coming up. So we were starting to put together an in-store, and then again Mike McCready comes, who I'd known since I was in high school and even before that. He says to me he said, "Dirks Bentley, I heard you might be having an in-store." I said, "Well, how'd you hear that?" He goes, "Well, I was just on vacation in Hawaii or something. I was just on vacation, and I bump into this guy. He looked familiar. I looked familiar to him. We start talking. It's Dirks Bentley. Before you know it, we're playing guitars. We're playing, bird songs and Graham Parsons and Crosby, Stills and Nash, and him and I hung out the rest of the week. I don't know what my wife was doing or his, but we were having a great time. We've become really good friends, and he says he's thinking about doing an in-store here. He said, could I slip in? Could I come get on board and maybe play a song or two with him? I said, absolutely, you do whatever you want. It's Record Store Day. It's free for all. And
So that really happened.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
And how was the show?
Oh, fantastic. He also brought up he said, "Hey, I've heard this girl, Star Anna, is from Seattle here.
Yeah.
Is she here?" And she was.
Kind of Prankster, yeah.
And he brought her up, and they did a song together, too.
Huge.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah,
Phenomenal.
they did a song. They also did a Stone song, somehow Bexel on Main Street. But great in-store. I still have his phone number. I mean, he's been a good friend of the shop ever since.
Did Nirvana ever play here?
No. Novoselic played
What's
here
that?
a couple times. Novoselic played
yes,
here.
of course, Chris did, yes.
And Novoselic and he came to a few of our parties, some of our early parties, back in those social club days.
Of course. What about the Clash?
Well, I have two stories there.
Go for it.
So there was a hip-hop group called Nerd, which was made up of the Neptunes, who produced some of the greatest hip-hop of the 2000s, but led by a young man by the name of Pharrell.
Oh.
And we were all big
Pharrell
fans
Williams.
we were all big fans of Pharrell. We were big fans of his group, Nerd. They were on Capitol Records. They were on tour, and again, Kevin Larson comes forward and said, "Hey, Fly or Die is coming out. Let's do a street date in-store. They just happen to be in town. They're opening up for the Gorillas at the Key Arena." And we're like, "Oh my God, that'd be
What a show.
we love Pharrell. We love Nerd. Yes." And what I recall before Nerd went on stage is that, well, first of all, Pharrell was early. He was there surveying the whole place. Very kind, but also very alert, very aware, and very proud of what he had just done, putting this record out. The other two guys weren't there yet, and they're late. At this point, maybe 45 minutes late, after, from the scheduled showtime.
Oh boy!
So all the fans are there waiting around. I'm going to guess 400 to 500 people during the show, and my office was directly across from the green room, or the break room, and he's in there with the other two guys from Nerd, laying into them about. And it was almost like, you must know that I'm behind the door and I can hear everything, but it was him going on about the power of retail, the power of bringing our music to the people. This is a street date. All of the work that we put in the studio, our time together all these years, and here we are putting this record out, and you're coming in late. In essence, you can kind of see the beginning and the end of that group. Pharrell was ready to go on his own, but he was just so proud of what he had just done, and that there were so many people.
He's a pro.
Yeah, he's a pro. Yeah, and he just wasn't having it. They did the show, amazing, signed autographs, outside taking photos with everybody. But during the show, Mick Jones and Paul Simon walked through the door. Now the Clash is Paul Simon, bass player, coolest bass player of all time. I said coolest. And Mick Jones.
Yeah.
Okay. They were they were playing bass and guitar on the session guys on the Gorillaz tour. Yeah, so they were part of the tour. So they came to see Nerd at the in-store. Now, they looked like they had just walked off the Sandinista cover shoot. I mean, they were, Simon had the big rimmed hat, looked great. Mick Jones had some camouflage suit on. And Mick, before I know it though, the show's over, Mick Jones is buying tons of records. Paul Simon started to get, he knew immediately, I gotta go. Everyone knows who I am and I can't stick around. So he bounced. And then Mick Jones wanted to see like the back room. He wanted to talk about a car that was in the parking lot, which just happened to be, there was a couple of hot rods or American style cars. One of them was mine, a 68 Ford pickup. And then there was like a GTO or some car or something in there. And he wanted to look under the hood. He was just really enthusiastic about American cars. And I got so rattled trying to ring him up, I just gave him all the records. I was just going to give him an employee discount or, friends and family, and then I just couldn't even control myself. I just boxed it up and gave it all to him. And then they gave us tickets to the show that was that night.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
What about your other story about the Clash?
Oh, well,
So you had two stories.
yeah. So, in the late 90s, Joe Strummer, he'd gone solo. He couldn't find a record deal. He was on a small label called Hellcat Records, which was getting distributed by Epitaph, which is a punk rock label out of Southern California. And it was great. Joe Strummer and the Mescaleros. It was fantastic. Blew everybody away. But he was on a radio tour. He was trying to promote the record. And he was just doing this solo. There's some footage of him in some documentaries of him going around all over the world, just him with his guitar, trying to get people to come to his shows, telling people about his record, making fun of himself. And in a way, it's sad, when you think about it. I mean, Joe Strummer, one of the greatest punk rock warlords of all time. But he was going to be doing an interview at the Mountain, KMTT, which seemed kind of weird because that's not the kind of station you would expect him to be on.
No, they don't exactly rock the Casbah.
Right. And so I heard about it, and I had a friend at the Mountain. I said, "True, you guys got Joe Strummer coming in there?" Like, yeah, he's going to do a couple songs and an interview. I'm like, man, I got to get in there. I said, I'll be swinging by. He goes, no, it's not open to the public. I'm like, no. I'm going to be coming by. I'm going to hit the buzzer, and you're going to let me in. I got a friend with me, my friend Ben Hatcher. We grew up as Clash Fanatics. And he says, no, man, I can't do that. And sure enough, my friend Ben and I show up. That's us up. We get out of the elevator, and my friend's just like, he's got his head down. He's just pointing. We go down we don't know where we're at. I've never been in that radio station before. We're going around. It's a maze. Finally, we find ourselves behind one-way glass. We're like, well, this must be it. And we're the only ones back there. We look, boom, all of a sudden, Joe Strummer walks in. We're behind the one-way glass. He doesn't know that we're there. And he's tuning his guitar. My friend and I and Ben, we're just like, is this really happening? Okay, we're here. No one even knows we're here. That's good. DJ walks in, and they start, doing some pre-questions, and Joe's not having it. He just wants to go off the flat. A couple other people come in behind the one-way glass now, but they think we're, invited guests. They don't know who we are. And interview starts, and he's asking Clash. It's just one question of Clash after the other. He gets to, and you can see Joe's like, we talk about something else. So you can sense that this punk rock brew is festering through his skin, right? And at one point, DJ says, "So, what was it like playing with Paul Simon?" Okay, well, as I just mentioned, Paul Simon is the bass player of Clash, the coolest bass player of all time. And Joe, no one is watching this, it's not being videoed. Joe spits on his shoes, the DJ's shoes, and looks up without missing a beat and says, "There's a lot of fun playing with him in Central Park." And he's just eyeing the guy down without missing a beat. Come on, you're not even going to get Paul Simon's name right? I mean, give me the respect, So, and then you hear Joe say, "Something tells me there's only going to be janitors at the show tonight," because he was playing the Chopin. So he's not feeling it, right? And we're embarrassed. We're embarrassed. This is our hometown, and this DJ's screwing it all up for all of us. And we know it's a sold out show. It's been sold out for weeks. Joe hasn't performed a solo ever in Seattle, I know. And Joe packs his guitar. I think he had another song or two to do, and he just packed up, walks out. Interview over. Terrible interview. He would have never done anything like this. And he walks out. We run around through the maze, finally find him. He's about ready to get in the elevator. We squeeze in the elevator with Joe. And it's just Joe and his guitar and Ben on one side and me on the other side. And we're pulling on Joe like he's Mean Joe Green. Right? We're just like, Joe. And the elevator's going down. And within the 30-second elevator ride, we convinced him that this was the wrong radio station. This is a sold-out show. This is your town. These are your people. This is going to be an amazing show, and we are all very excited. And I listed off a couple of the tracks off the new record. He was surprised by that. You know, I think Ben rattled off a lyric or two. It's like, okay. So we get on the street, and we're on the street, and he says, "Place I can get a cup of tea." I said, "Yeah." "You're gonna have to follow us." He said, "Well, we're a gang. We're walking together. Yeah, have a cup of tea with me." So we're walking across the. We're going up Denny across the over I-5, and coming up. We're coming around Olive, and I want to take him to B&O Espresso. He's up there. As we're walking up there, he said, "So this is a good half mile walk with Joe Strummer. No one bothers him. No one knows. It's just three guys walking through the street. It was like a midweek morning, like 10 and 11 o'clock. It says, it wouldn't happen to be a record shop around." And there was a store called Fallout that was on the way. Great store, punk rock store, great. And 100 yards later, yeah, Joe, here's Fallout Records. Great. We all walk in. The girl at the counter, just like dumbfounded. She knew exactly who it was. Like, in a way, it's why our store's even here, And he sees a Billy Childish record, and he looks at it and he's like, "Oh, it's my kind of store." And he says, "Boys, I'm going to be here a while. You do your thing, I got to do my thing. I got some things I got to write down." We point to where where he can get his tea. So, all right, well, I'll be up there. But can you be my bodyguards tonight? Ben and I look at each other. Yeah, what's that entail? Meet me at the showbox at 7 o'clock. I'm like, okay. Let me check this. Well, we're going to be at the show anyways. He goes, no. Meet me at... Yeah. I'm like, okay. Well, so Ben and I go on a day drinking hustling pool trip up and down Capitol Hill for the next 8 to 10 hours, right? Couldn't believe that we had just walked a half mile with Joe Strummer, and we had a conversation with him. We showed him our Fallout records. So all
should be his bodyguards. Yeah.
And then now we're going to be his bodyguards. So we get ourselves straight, before we head down to the show box. We're knocking on the door. Of course, nothing. We go to the back door, right in the alley. Guy opens the door. Who are you guys with? Joe Strummer told us to be. Now starts to shut the door. No, mate. Those guys are with me. Joe lets us in. You guys want to see sound check? Yeah. Okay. So now we're watching sound check. Ben and I are trying not to be, done high-fiving white guys, right? We're just like, just trying to take it all in. And then he hops off the stage and says, "All right, let me show you what you're going to be doing tonight. I'm going to need you on one side of the stage and you on the other side." I'm like, "Oh, this is for real?" And then he shows us this, he draws out a map. It's like, he said, "Follow me." And we follow him. And he keeps looking behind him, right? Okay, so I have a stash of beer from Ireland. It's my favorite beer. And no label on it, but it's like Grolsch style where you pop the bottle up, the cap up. And he had a case of it. 24, 48 bottles of this stuff. He had a good sized band, 6, 7 members or so. He says, "I just don't want my crew to see where I got my beer, I'm like, oh, okay. So yeah, I just got all this today. And he says, so this is where it's at. And whenever you get a head nod from me or one of my mates on stage, go get us a beer." Like, oh, so that's what we're doing. we're not really doing security. I go, well, not so much. I'm not too worried about that. Maybe after the show. But for now, you're just hustling beers.
Wow.
But we were busy that night. I mean, they were serious beer drinkers. I mean, it was every minute. There was another beer.
That's hilarious.
And the Mescaleros knew who we were. It's almost like, are there two guys like us that do this every night throughout the tour?
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm not finished. We haven't even gotten to the really good part yet.
Oh my God.
And he says, so we go through almost all the beers. Encore. Place is going crazy. Everyone's in love with him. Lights come on, and security's kicking everybody out. And we're like, oh, no, we're Joe's security. We're with Joe. Okay. Guys seem like Seattle guys to me, but okay. And then sure enough, Joe comes by and says, yeah, those guys are with me. Okay. He's like, you want to come back with us? We'll just listen to some music. Like, okay. And sure enough, he had like a boom box, like the on the back cover of Combat Rock, big boom box, and he's playing some Moroccan music. I remember asking him what it was, and it was some Moroccan like psychedelic music from I don't know what era, but it was very cool, and he had it turned up to 11, so it was all staticky and had the reverb to it, and he's kind of dancing around. He says, oh, I just remembered, I have a meet and greet to do. He said, I'm going to need you boys for that. I'm like, okay, sure. We go out into the lobby of the showbox, and there's probably 150 people in line. Either, I don't know, it was contest winners or something, but they get to meet Joe Strummer. Sign autographs for them. Joe says to us, he goes, these usually go pretty all right, but you never know. Just stay on one side of me, huh? Like, okay, you got it, Joe. And so we're just, taking photos, letting people meet Joe. We'd be taking photos for the people, getting their camera. Joe's, needs another pen. We're doing all that kind of thing. And certainly I was used to that already. But all's going well, but there's these two guys in the very back that are causing a ruckus. They're wasted. They got a stack of Clash records and 45s. A little older than Ben and I. These guys they went back in time. These were, they lived through this 1976 punk era, let's put it that way. And I recognized them. Sure enough, they're the last ones. They're the caboose of the whole line. They get up to Joe, and Joe kind of noticed him a few seconds, maybe a minute beforehand, that there was these guys in the back that were causing a little bit of a problem. Not anything Joe couldn't handle on his own, but we happened to be there. And one of the guys says, Joe, man, you're in Seattle. You're in Jimi Hendrix country. Who's the greatest guitar player of all time? Right? Okay. Well, Joe's a pretty nationalistic guy. As far as he loves his England, right? And he lists off Jeff Beck, Eric Clapton, Jimmy Page, Richard Thompson. I mean, the list goes on. He lists every great guitar player that has ever lived from the UK, and then spits on the guy's shoes, and says, "I don't give a fuck. The greatest guitar players come from the UK." And we're like, "Oh shit, okay." And things were getting a little hot. And the guy didn't take to it very well. This is his hero, right? And Joe doesn't want him around. The other guy was just as bad. He was on the side of his friend, right? going on about Jimi Hendrix, and I'm all about Jimi Hendrix. He's my favorite guitar player of all time. Okay, but I'm with Joe Strummer, for God's sake, and I'm going to respect where he's at, okay, and what his opinion is. He gives us a head nod, like, these guys got to go. Like, okay. So I take the one guy out, and Ben takes the other guy out, and that was that. And we come back, and Joe says, was that the guy from REM? I'm like, I believe so. Yeah, I think that was Peter Buck. He's like, yeah, I can't fucking stand that guy. The other guy with him, I think, was John Wesley Harding. He was a great songwriter. I mean, Peter Buck and John Wesley Harding, fantastic, great musicians. I haven't told that story in its entirety ever, at least not publicly. And I don't know if everyone will remember it that way, but that's how Ben and I remember.